All right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Apologies for the slight delay. We had some technical difficulties, but we're now back on track. And welcome. Welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club. I'm Grace Donovan, and I'd like to start off by introducing today's conversation. And the main purpose of the Industry 4.0 Club is to accelerate the evolution of Industry 4.0 by engaging in the power of diverse talent worldwide. This is Women in Manufacturing, our Tuesday conversation that focuses on tech and manufacturing. In this space, we focus on the perspectives of women in the industry, and we'd like to welcome you to our fall series where we highlight women in software engineering. We're excited to introduce you to women who've worked in various roles of industrial software engineering in manufacturing and Industry 4.0. As I mentioned, I'm Grace. I'm an Industry 4.0 Club co-founder and Women in Manufacturing co-host. I currently serve as the executive director of the Rural Engagement and Vitality Center at Eastern Oregon University, which connects university talent to community organizations across a very rural part of a very big state to support vibrant rural economies and communities. Before we kick off, I'd like to introduce my co-host and fellow I4.0 Club co-founder, Karen Rivera. Hi, Karen.
Hello, ladies. Hi, Grace. Hi, Olivia. Looking forward to today's discussion, most definitely. For those who are new to me, I am a Salesforce and Marketing Cloud Account Engagement Strategist for Cleaver Brooks. We are a industrial boiler manufacturer, and I get to work with a wide variety of teams so we could maximize the 3 Ps: the potential of our people, of our processes, and our platforms to help make digital transformation seamless for everyone involved. And then I also serve as the state chair for the Women in Manufacturing Texas chapter. So I'm super excited to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. All right. So today we are pleased to introduce Olivia Morales as our special guest. Olivia, thank you so much for joining us today and for coming on Industry 4.0 Women in Manufacturing.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Yeah, just a little introduction to myself. I work for an organization called SESMII as a solutions architect. SESME is focused on democratizing smart manufacturing. And what that really means is making smart manufacturing technology, concepts, vendors, services, connecting those to manufacturers who can then take advantage of their data and kind of level up their ability to deliver on their manufacturing goals. My background is in software engineering, though, so I come from a history of product development and all within the industrial sort of industry, but now focusing heavily on architecture and implementation, finding ways that we can use repeatable technologies and concepts to elevate the manufacturing landscape.
Excellent. Thank you. So if people are unfamiliar with SESME, could you tell us a little bit about its background and like how it's going about helping manufacturers democratize smart manufacturing and smart industry?
Yeah, definitely. So SESME is part of a network of Manufacturing USA institutes that form public-private partnerships. They've formed out of the U.S. government, different arms of the U.S. government. So SESME specifically is funded by the Department of Energy. So we are tasked by the Department of Energy with democratizing smart manufacturing with the end goal of reducing energy waste across the industry. And how we do that, we have a couple of key pillars for how we tackle that kind of large goal. One is the technology, which is kind of at the root of everything, I think. Then there is the education and workforce development. And then the final pillar is the ecosystem. We are member supported, member driven. And so a big part of achieving those goals is connecting our members, which includes manufacturers, technology providers, other experts, research and development, connecting those otherwise separate groups together to collaborate and figure out how to achieve smart manufacturing across the industry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, looks like we lost Karen, but we'll carry on. So I can certainly understand the importance of reducing energy use, just because that often tends to be such a big line item for a lot of manufacturers, or a big expense rather. But from a national perspective, what is perhaps, like, the federal government hoping to achieve by making our manufacturing industry more energy efficient? Is that something that like addresses directly?
So the manufacturing industry accounts for a large percentage of greenhouse gases in the United States, first of all. So anywhere where we can reduce waste in the manufacturing process is going to help impact that. And a key area where we are seeing a lot of waste is in sort of reinventing the wheel, doing work that we have to repeat from plant to plant. And so one of the ways that SESME is targeting this is finding architectures and technologies that facilitate the repeatability that we need to see within manufacturing, so that we're not solving the same problem twice, and especially solving the same problem twice in the same way.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, and I think is really appropriate, because it's so easy to get siloed into your own work or your own community. And so having something like SESME that's going to be at a higher level to facilitate or point people in the right direction, like having those connectors and organizations that are going to say, hey, we have a solution for this, or there's different ways that we can approach this to reach those goals and help you out in the process.
Right. And it's not just the education bit. So the technology piece, we try to bring to life with actual solutions, right? So we're not a solutions provider, but we spend a lot of time talking to manufacturers and technology providers to come up with the best way to tackle some of their problems, right? So that is sometimes just showing demos that use real pieces of technology and bring that vision to life, so that manufacturers, especially a small and medium manufacturer, can see the potential of these different building block technologies.
And a lot of those, like, not only solutions that you're demoing, but also some of the solutions that you guys do work and support are open source. Is that correct?
Yes. So one of the key enablers we see in the industry for achieving smart manufacturing is leveraging open source code and leveraging standards. So both of those play well together. So standards being sort of industry driven technology concepts, we work closely with the OBC Foundation, but to put it in a more simple, an example of a standard is HTML, right? Or a JSON schema. So something as simple as following industry agreed upon concepts for implementation is going to go a long way. And then on top of that, building and facilitating open source code that leverages those standards accelerates a manufacturer technology provider's ability to actually deploy technologies in a repeatable way.
Sorry, that's I also don't come from the software world at all. So sometimes that's just like slightly it takes me a little bit kind of like wrap my brain around it, but that's a very you put it very eloquently. So perhaps for those who might not be familiar kind of with the software side and kind of open source and open standard, why is this so important to Industry 4.0?
So up until now, and I think we're starting to sort of see a shift in this, but up until now, a lot of the development around these solutions and technologies have happened in a vacuum or with a lot of vendor lock-in, right? Yeah. So, and you can get great solutions out of that. You can solve the problem, but what happens when you want to upgrade, update, use a different piece of software with your existing infrastructure? By leveraging open standards and open source code, you're more able to switch out the key components that work best for you, and be able to actually pick from the best of the best. It also means that you're able to experiment a little bit more, and it's a little less risky to make that change, because you know that you can experiment with a different product or a different piece of technology without having to rip out everything that you have.
Yeah. And reducing risk is so huge, especially because we're often talking about like large operations, or just it can be quite expensive and risky just to stop a line to test out something only to see if it truly works. And so having that kind of flexibility, I did work in software for a time, but definitely on the sales side, not on the back end engineering part. But I know that when I was like speaking to potential customers, like that vendor lock-in was real, and trying to find a way around that was as a challenge. And so I think, and you can confirm this because you have a different vantage point than I do or did, but it's becoming quite common for some new entrants in this like manufacturing software side to be like leveraging a lot of this as well, because they see the benefits of reducing that risk. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. I want to toss it over to Karen.
Thanks, Grace.
Yeah.
Olivia, I have a question. When you're working with clients, and I've been on the side of the fence that I'm referring to, we have an idea of what we want, but not exactly sure of what it looks like. How would you describe the process to get us to that light bulb moment?
That's a great question, because I feel like that's something that a lot of people struggle with, right? They know that they want to implement new technology, or begin or continue on their Industry 4.0 journey, but it's hard to get started, and it feels overwhelming, and it feels like you want to make a big change, but you don't want to go down the wrong path. So as you're getting started, and when I work with kind of different members at different stages, I try to ask a lot of questions around, both for myself and for whoever I'm talking to kind of jointly come up with an idea of what actually we're trying to achieve, right? Put some parameters around it, identify some use cases. And then part of what I try to do is bring to life some of the concepts that might make it possible to get there, right? So showing some examples of how to leverage open source or information modeling or repeatable architectures, and bringing that to life with real technology to showcase and facilitate the discussion. But I really think one of the key places to get started is identifying some specific parameters for what you want to tackle. It could be something big. It could be, multi-plant deployment of smart manufacturing technologies, or it could be something much smaller. It could be adding instrumentation and sensors to existing equipment to get some of the insights on vibration, for example, that you couldn't have gotten otherwise. So yeah, putting some scope around it, asking questions to sort of facilitate a thoughtful discussion and kind of get to some of those light bulb moments, and then sharing with them and developing together some ideas around what can actually be possible with the different technology. And sometimes you have to see examples to kind of have that creativity open up.
I'm curious on like some of the questions that you ask, right? Like asking good questions is so critical to getting to these light bulb moments, and asking questions is an art. So I'm curious how your perhaps like own process or even like training within SESME has helped you learn how to ask some of the right questions. And so that people who are maybe tuning in can learn what kind of questions could they ask themselves if they want to see some improvements in their facilities.
Yeah, I think one thing is lead with your own curiosity. Mm-hmm. And then the other part is put your ego at the door, right? You have to understand that as to actually help someone on this journey, you're going to have to ask some dumb questions that may seem obvious, or you feel are obvious, or the person that you're talking to thinks are obvious. But at SESME, I work with all different types of industries, all different types of individuals, from R&D, from students who are working on developing ML algorithms, to folks who are hands-on with machinery, all the way to technology providers that are providing and developing platform technologies. So asking questions that seem dumb but are fundamental is probably the main place to start. Make sure that you're on the same page in terms of, how do we define things, and what is that machine, right? What do you do with that? How does it work? And from there, I just try to listen and look for more opportunities to dig in, or listen for what items are resonating with the person I'm talking to, what gets them excited, or what points are they confused about? Because sometimes it's hard to distinguish whether or not someone's actually, if you're both speaking the same language, right? I think we have a tendency to say, yes, okay, I agree, I understand, but are we on the same page? Do we actually agree? Let's challenge that a little bit.
Yeah. So when you said earlier, check your ego at the door, I was kind of assuming you're talking to the client. And I'm like, oh, wait, no, that goes both ways. Like that's 100% checking your own ego at the door too. Because like you said, kind of asking those dumb questions, it's easy to skip over those because you don't want to be perceived as, or like, then this can be anyone, of just, it kind of gets into that, like those social dynamics of, I don't want to ask simple, silly questions because it might undermine what I'm bringing to the table. But if you don't actually kind of establish a shared language and a shared understanding, then it takes so much longer to get to those light bulb moments and to get to those solutions. So I just wanted, like, that was what was going on in my own head. Like, oh, wait, no, we have to check our own at the door too.
Yeah, I have to be comfortable, feeling a little uncomfortable, I guess. And it's okay. That's where you learn, right? We all started somewhere, right? You start without knowing about something, and then through research and asking questions and reading, you learn. I mean, you want to come in prepared as possible, but at a certain point, you need to discuss.
An important part is to never lose the beginner's mind, because what may seem obvious to you, to a beginner, it is not. And that silly question really ends up not being as silly as we thought. And always walking in, because you've done it so many times before that you've done it in your sleep. And then that's where a lot of times the details fall out. And so the checking ego at the door, the first thing that went through my mind is you always walk in with a beginner's mind.
Yeah, it's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, and that's important for me to remember too, because when you start going deep on something like software and technology, it's easy to feel like everyone shares your perspective or your knowledge. And there's a balance between wanting to explain the concepts or bring them to life, but also not wanting to, I was going to say mansplain, but I'm a woman, but like you don't want to over explain concepts that your audience already knows the answers to. So how do you sort of tease out where we're on the same page and where we have to sort of learn?
Yeah. It's a fine balance at times. And so you have a use case, if you're able to share one where you're providing kind of maybe a more concrete example of how you were helping a customer solve an industry, like an Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing problem.
Sure. So actually recently, I'm going to back up for a second. So one of the main things that SESME is working on is facilitating good smart manufacturing, facilitated by information modeling. So information modeling is giving context, discoverability, meaning to data, right? And we see it already across industry. I mean, a vendor will do it for their particular solutions, but we want to see it industry-wide. And so, but those concepts all leverage a lot of software concepts that have not been brought into the manufacturing world. So last week, I was working with a SESME member who was trying to build an information model for a 3D printer. And why is he building an information model for a 3D printer? Well, he wants to be able to leverage the data. He's got lots of 3D printers. They're all a little bit different, but they have some key components. And he wants to be able to ingest the data, represent it on a dashboard. Each one of those is going to have its own communications protocol, own way of ingesting the data. And different. So that means that it's going to be called, tag 123 on one system, and then tag 01 on the other system. So, but they both represent the same thing, which is the position of the 3D printer. So how do we represent the data that he needs to utilize in a way that's repeatable, so that he doesn't have to rethink about how to make all those connections every time he, goes to deploy and wants to represent that information? Mm-hmm. So all of those concepts around object-oriented programming need to be brought into the manufacturing space. But with that comes education and teaching around those concepts, and being able to use tools that facilitate that education and then application of the concepts. So we got hands-on. We used a builder to and a user interface to build the information model, and leverage concepts like composition and inheritance that are fundamental to computer engineering. So composition is bringing different components together in that information model. So sort of additive, right? A car has wheels plus engine. Those two things compose a car. Versus inheritance, which would be, we have a type that is a car, and a BMW inherits from that base type. So that allows you to get more specific with your type definitions. Mm-hmm. With the end goal being, you can use data for any car information model and represent it in a consistent way that's discoverable, gives context to the data. And the next step after kind of introducing these concepts to the user was to give him some space to actually use them, right? Because a lot of the learning happens by actually doing, right? So giving some of the tools, some of the education, some of the concepts, and then giving the end user the freedom to dig in and discover on their own.
So, and you said this was just last week, so it might be a little bit early to see what kind of outcomes that produced for this manufacturer. But what are they hoping to achieve with this data?
So
that visibility and structure.
Yeah. So one thing that they're hoping to do is, they want to be able to publish this profile, this information model, mm-hmm. to the SESME marketplace, which will make it available to other SESME members, so that they don't have to start from scratch. So that mm-hmm. sort of goes hand in hand with the sort of open source collaborative nature of SESME. And then the next thing that I think that they're hoping to do is use the data coming in through the information model to just represent it, right? Get insight into how the 3D printer is running. From there, you can build AI algorithms. You can start getting insights into how the machine itself is performing, not just what it's doing, but how well is it doing it. Mm-hmm. But to be able to do that at scale, you need to have a repeatable structure for that data.
Yeah. As a total aside on like 3D printing, but very much like using some of the same like technologies, I recently learned that there is now, it's not truly 3D printing, but it's like nail painting using some of the similar mechanics of 3D printers. And they're scanning like women's nails. And so like tech is really moving into new spaces that I would never have expected. Yeah. And I was like thinking of like data points that go into 3D manufacturing, and it's like the type of material and temperature and viscosity. And for painting people's nails using an automated machine, viscosity was incredibly important, of course. Right. So that's just a total aside, but I did not expect to see kind of some of that tech that is very common in manufacturing now, very much in like, you might find it in Sephora.
Right.
More.
Now, Olivia, I'm not going to lie, I'm super excited that you're going to be speaking at South by Southwest, because that is in our neighborhood and in our great state. And you're speaking on sustainability this coming March. You kind of answered the question with the example that you just gave, but can you give another example of how the world of sustainability and software come together in manufacturing? And I'm
Sure.
sure you have plenty of examples, but I'm ready to hear another one.
Yeah. So yeah, really excited to be representing SESME at South by Southwest. I'll be on a panel discussing how we are reimagining energy use using digital technologies. And so my perspective is obviously going to be focused on the manufacturing and industrial side of things. I think that sustainability and software really go hand in hand, because I mean, when you think about sustainability and you think about all the sort of problem spaces to tackle within, the environment and greenhouse gases, there's a tendency to kind of reduce it to like reduce, reuse, recycle, right? Just do that. But what you lose in that sort of those three steps is the actual insights around, like how the impact that those things are having, right? And so I think software is a really great tool to facilitate the insights that you get from, say you have a energy reduction, your company's tasked with X% energy reduction, and you come up with a strategy of how to do that. But how do you actually measure that? So that's where software and using digital technologies and really being able to manage your data helps bring that to life, to see what success even looks like. Mm-hmm. And maybe your benchmark isn't so good. Maybe you do some preliminary analysis and, you're wasting a bunch of product each month. So that information is a great starting point. From there, you can actually make some decisions and start finding some of the bottlenecks around what is impacting that waste. And that waste impacts your bottom line as a manufacturer, but it also impacts the global goals around sustainability and waste and pollution, and just trash in general. So, maybe the next step is figuring out a way to recycle some of that material. The next step can be how to stop having waste to begin with. How do we make the process more efficient? How do we find problems earlier in the cycle? And with software and the ability to organize your data and, develop algorithms to get those insights earlier on, that directly impacts the ability to reduce your waste.
So I think, like, in summary, right, like detection and insights is really the name of the game, and kind of where software really does a lot of heavy lifting. And then goes back to whether that's like equipment manufacturers are figuring out a way to kind of achieve those goals of reduce, reuse, recycle. Yeah, there's a lot of really, I mean, the possibilities are endless in terms of it when you frame it that way, right? And I think sometimes it can be like you think of software, you don't immediately connect it to sustainability, but this is kind of opening up a new pathway of thought for me in in a new way, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and I think that it also can have an impact. So a lot of times you think about using data at a sort of high level within the business. Mm-hmm. But I think a big part of developing digital technologies and getting onto an Industry 4.0 journey and implementing some of those smart manufacturing technologies allows those insights to happen closer to the source of the manufacturing, right? Mm-hmm. Don't wait until it's all the way to the VPs and the CEOs who are making the decisions. Give that decision-making power to the people who are close to the operation and can have the most direct impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a quick example from when I worked for a software technology company in Detroit, we one of the technologies that it was very much like, how can we help manufacturers transition from paper-based processes to digital processes using smartphone technology? So, people have computers in their pockets, let's leverage that. And the platform was called Andonics, and they had an Andon cord. So that's very much like the concept you mentioned, like let's put the power in the hands of the people that are on the floor. If you're familiar with kind of like the Toyota way, everyone had an Andon cord, like everyone was empowered to stop the line and report that there was problems. And we worked with an international food manufacturer who was still using paper to report on temperatures. And again, we're talking food products. And so temperature, resting, like processing times were also important. And we found that because people just needed to get on and do other things, like they had a lot of responsibilities on their plate. In the beginning of the day, when they had to fill out their check sheet, they were filling it out for the entire day. And all the data was just like invented.
Yeah.
So by putting a digital like system in place that said, okay, now you need to go check it, and an hour later come back and check again, and it wouldn't let anyone pre-enter data, they were able to reduce waste like by a huge jump. And so, step one is just like getting there with the technology and then implementing new ways to detect, okay, are we having energy surges, or is there like a product leak, right, that's causing some waste? How can we reduce that and bring that around to make businesses more sustainable and ultimately more successful?
Right. And we talked about earlier, like where do you get started, right? How do you identify those areas to get started? And so asking the probing questions to get to things like that, just digitizing the small piece can go a long way. You don't have to, totally transform your entire operation to start getting some value from the digital technologies.
Yeah. Sometimes it's amazing to realize like how much of a small change, like really a big impact it has. Like an example that I heard recently was like, why are no airplanes black? And that's because black paint is heavier, just very, very slightly heavier, because pigmentation has weight, and that has huge effects on fuel consumption. But that's something the airline industry's figured out like a really long time ago. But I'd never heard it posed in that way, right? And so it's, okay, let's switch from black to white paint or dark blue to white, and we will save millions of dollars in the long run. Like small changes, especially when we're talking of like manufacturing at scale, can have a really huge impact.
Yeah, and I think it also helps bring confidence to those who are kind of putting forth those changes, or to the skeptics within the organization that didn't want to invest on the large digital transformation. Some of those small changes, seeing those impacts up front and quickly, helps bring confidence to make bigger changes or bring further innovation into the plant. So
yeah, 100%. I think you want to start with some of the smaller changes so that you can kind of, like you said, build that confidence of like, yes, we know this is going to work. We kind of see the time that it's going to maybe take to get those returns, so that you can tackle those more ambitious projects that might have a return window of multiple years, or, quite a long time. But if you have a lot of experience in terms of, implementing improvements, adopting Industry 4.0 technology, and seeing the benefit that it's going to have, it helps also get the organization in alignment around some of the changes, which of course, behind all software implementation and improvements in Industry 4.0 are people, and people can be finicky. So you're speaking at South by Southwest. You're also going to be speaking at the upcoming IME West in February in California, that the I4.0 Club is helping to organize. So could you share with us a little bit about what you expect to cover in your talk?
Yeah. So I'll be talking about information modeling, which I've discussed quite a bit today as well, and how it's the foundation for a good smart manufacturing strategy. So obviously start by discussing what information modeling actually is and all the things it can be, how to actually approach using information models in your system. So depending on where you are and where you want to go, how to actually start leveraging information modeling concepts, and where you can leverage SESME, and where you can leverage other standards, kind of hopefully bringing it to life in terms of what that information modeling can give you, both right now and in the future. So how how building good information models lays the foundational groundwork for innovation for your organization and for the industry at large, in the years, decades to come. So that's in a nutshell what I'll be discussing.
That's exciting. I had the good fortune of attending last year, and it was a blast. So I would highly encourage everyone to consider attending, especially if you're in the manufacturing space. There's tons of good information being shared, not only by Olivia, of course, but a lot of just really intelligent and passionate people that are coming to this conference. And I think one thing that surprised me so much about manufacturing conferences, having never been to any before, was just how collaborative they really were in terms of like, yeah, let's, this is not about gatekeeping certain technologies so that we can do better. It was very, very, very collaborative and supportive. So would highly recommend.
I've seen the same sort of theme, and it's really exciting, especially since that's a big part of what SESME is trying to do, but we can't do it if we don't have that collaboration from the industry. So seeing that participation has been, I think, a game changer. And but then also seeing it, not just the collaboration with us, but then our members go off and they collaborate without us, is that's the exact momentum we want to see.
Excellent. Well, Karen, I'll toss it over to you. I've been talking a lot.
So now that we're approaching the end, before we close, definitely want to get some final thoughts and takeaways. Actually want to leave Olivia for last so we can close it off with a golden brushstroke. So let's go with Grace.
All right, back to me. Let's see. I think very much highlighted by the talks on sustainability. I don't often immediately think of software as like a major player in the movement on sustainability. The through lines are clear, but I think that has just yet to really take preeminence in kind of how I envision sustainability. And I know it can be, of course, like a big selling point, and everyone is incentivized to seek that out. And I just really appreciate having that kind of new framework of how to think about sustainability, because again, software didn't really come into my mind thinking about that, but it might be like a natural conclusion that is reached of like, oh, we want to reduce waste. All right, let's identify some software that can help us. So just kind of drawing that closer for me was a great takeaway of this conversation. And then I do really appreciate kind of the vantage point that SESME is approaching this on. I think, we just, in Industry 4.0, it was very much a grassroots kind of movement among manufacturers of like, okay, this is like the next evolution, right? But Industry 4.0 is not being mandated by like states. It's being supported. But I think that having umbrella-like organizations that are really promoting a lot of this to not only improve the competitiveness of our manufacturing industry, which is a huge like pillar of our economy, but is also just a great employer and a way to sorry, I'm getting like a little off base, but it is just so fundamentally important to have those top-down supports as well, as I think really where I'm getting at. So I appreciate kind of that perspective that SESME brings.
Okay, thank you, Grace. I just really enjoyed how you painted the picture of helping people connect that dot between the sustainability, manufacturing, and technology. I wouldn't say siloed, but I think people struggle to connect the three and what roles each of them play, and how you illustrated that, even just with the benchmarks to illustrate what success looks like, kind of helps guide whatever manufacturer and what they're trying to accomplish, kind of help them focus. And that data helps you do that. And then plus the data doesn't lie. So the benchmark is what it is. And then you have to, as a manufacturer or as a business owner, what can we do to improve it? So it's like the thing that keeps us honest. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I just lost my train of thought. Before we close, I definitely want to thank you, Olivia. I can't wait for March because I am planning on going to South by Southwest. So I get to see you live and in real life. Thanks for joining Industry 4.0 Club on this topic. I think it was super interesting. Looking forward to having more conversations with you about this, hint, hint, and really soaking up the experience that you bring to the table. And I want to, for those reviewing, You have a little bit of a fan base in the comments that I was taking a peek at. So thank you all for those insights and things like that. If you want to stay, excuse me, up to date on what we're doing and what we're up to, definitely check out and follow us on LinkedIn. And we also have a Substack newsletter called Shaping the Future. Interesting information there. You can pick that up at our website, industry4.0club.com. We do have a couple of minutes left. Grace, did you want to go to some of the comments?
I was going to have Olivia bring it home with that golden brushstroke, right?
That is true. That is true. I'm so sorry, Olivia. Olivia, bring us home with that brushstroke.
Sure. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation today, and I've sort of been reflecting throughout it. I love talking about software, and I love talking about smart manufacturing. And I mean, I love digging deep on those concepts as well. But I think one of my main takeaways from this discussion is also how important it is to keep these concepts approachable and meet our audience where they're at, right? Give them the tools to bring these concepts to life wherever that may be, wherever they're starting. And sometimes that's defining concepts. Sometimes that's jumping straight to an implementation. But I think that that's so fundamental. Even if I want to nerd out on something really specific within an architecture, you really have to meet, and you have to meet people where they're at. And that's something that I really hope to continue to do with SESME.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's very indicative of like, make sure that we're checking egos at the door, ourselves and others. This is a classic example of me not doing the same, not checking my ego. All right. Well, definitely look out for Olivia at IME West and South by Southwest. And then Olivia, if people want to connect with you and talk more about perhaps like getting support from SESME or navigating some of the resources that SESME offers, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
They can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. And then the SESME website also has ways to get connected to SESME in general or learn more about what we're doing, what our project teams have done, what our members are doing. So yeah, LinkedIn or the website are great places to start.
Excellent. Yeah. And I believe so someone was highlighting a couple resources in the chat. You'll be able to go click on those links directly, whether that's now or in the recording. So definitely take a look in the comments. Olivia, thank you so much. And Karen, thank you as well. And thanks to the audience for sticking with us. Despite some of the technical difficulties that we had today, we really appreciate it. Hope you have an excellent rest of your week.
Thank you so much.